Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Nazir. We are up to Perek Zayin Mishnah Alayev. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'ilu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Ranbayev, Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Chana bad Miriam, and Sason ben Raya, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, and Le'avdi ben Chaim L'Chaim, V'derefua Shelemav, Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, B'tor Shar Chulei Israel. The following chapter deals with the laws of corpse tumah and their effect on a Nazir. It begins with a discussion of an exception to the law that a Nazir may not become tameh from a corpse. We learned in the previous chapter, Mishnah 5, that although a Nazir is forbidden to become tameh from a corpse even for his closest relatives, an exception is made in the case of an abandoned corpse, a med mitzvah. Our Mishnah elaborates on this exception. Kohen Gadol v'Nazir enan mitamein b'krovehen. A Kohen Gadol and Nazir may not become tameh to corpses, even to those of their close relatives, meaning they may not become tameh even to their parents, siblings, children, or spouse. This is stated explicitly in the Torah in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 21, verse 11, for the Kohen Gadol, and in Bamidbar, chapter 6, verses 6 through 7, for the Nazir. This is in contrast to the law for an ordinary Kohen, who may become tameh to these close relatives, even though he is forbidden to become tameh to the corpses of other people, as says in the Torah, chapter 7, Vayikra, chapter 21, verses 2 and 3. Aval mitamein lemed mitzvah, but they may become tameh to an abandoned corpse in order to bury it by specifying the close relatives to a Kohen Gadol and Nazir are forbidden to become tameh. Instead of just saying that they may not become tameh to anyone, the Torah implies that they are permitted to become tameh to someone, namely an abandoned corpse whom there is a special mitzvah and obligation to bury. If they were together on the road and they found an abandoned corpse, which one of them should bury the corpse and become tameh? Since it is possible for one person to do it on his own, they may not both become tameh. Rabbi Eliezer says it is better that the Kohen Gadol should become tameh and the Nazir should not become tameh. But the sages say that it is better the Nazir should become tameh and the Kohen Gadol should not become tameh. Now the Tanaim explained their views. Amar lehem Rabbi Eliezer said to the sages, it is better that the Kohen should become tameh because he does not have to bring an offering for his tumah. Now, although the beginning of the Mishnah referred to a Kohen Gadol and a Nazir walking together, the rule is the same for an ordinary Kohen and a Nazir who are walking together. The reason the Mishnah mentioned a Kohen Gadol is to highlight the view of Rabbi Eliezer that even when the Kohen walking with the Nazir is a Kohen Gadol, Rabbi Eliezer still rules that he should become tameh, not the Nazir, again because he does not have to bring an offering for his tumah. And that the Nazir should not become tameh because he does have to bring an offering for his tumah. The fact that a Nazir must bring offerings for becoming tameh shows that the Torah was stricter about his level of holiness than it was about the Kohen Gadol's. Therefore, given a choice, the Kohen Gadol should be the one to become tameh, bearing the corpse rather than the Nazir. Amrulo, the sages said to Rabbi Eliezer, Itama Nazir shen kidushato kidushat olam. It is better that the Nazir should become tameh because his holiness is not a holiness that lasts forever. V'alitama kohen shekidushato kidushat olam, and that the Kohen should not become tameh because his holiness is a holiness that lasts forever. A Kohen's holiness lasts forever. He is born a Kohen, dies a Kohen, and passes his kehunah status to future generations. This shows that his holiness is greater than a Nazir's. A Kohen therefore should not become tameh if a Nazir is present. Even if a Nazir accepted Nazirut for the rest of his life, he was not born a Nazir, nor does he pass his Nazirut to future generations. His holiness, and certainly the holiness of an ordinary Nazir, which lasts for only 30 days, is temporary when compared with the holiness of a Kohen. And that is the end of Mishnah Aleph. Mishnah Bet lists the types of corpse tumah for which a Nazir must perform the ritual of shaving for tumah taught in chapter 6, Mishnah 6. We will learn in the next Mishnah that there are certain kinds of corpse tumah for which a Nazir does not shave, even though he is forbidden to become tameh from them. Our Mishnah therefore lists the ones for which he does shave. Al elu tumot a Nazir megaleach, for becoming tameh from the following types of corpse tumah, a Nazir must shave, meaning after becoming tahor from these sources of corpse tumah, he must shave, bring his tumah offerings, and start his zirut over again, as the Mishnah will say below. The Torah teaches the law of shaving for corpse tumah by saying in Sefer Bamidbar, chapter 6, verse 9, if a person should die suddenly beside him, This implies that these laws apply only in cases where the tumah is contracted directly from the dead person, meaning the body of the corpse, or from things considered to be like his person, such as the parts listed in this Mishnah. Alayev, for becoming tameh from a corpse. Val kazait min hamet, or an olive's volume of the flesh of a corpse, meaning a piece of flesh that came off a corpse. To give up corpse tumah, it must be at least the size of a kazait, the volume of an egg. Since an azil shaves, the size of a kazait, the volume of a olive. Since an azil shaves for becoming tameh from just a kazait of flesh from a corpse, there was no need for the Mishnah to say that he shaves for becoming tameh from an entire corpse. It's evident. If for kazait to become tameh, for sure for the entire body. The Gemara on page 58, Masechet Nazir, therefore explains that when the Mishnah lists a corpse, it refers to an incomplete corpse, and indeed just to the bones of the corpse. If an azil becomes tameh from an incomplete skeleton, and these bones make up a majority of the frame of the skeleton, or a majority of its 248 bones, then azil must shave. Val kazait netzel, or from an olive's volume of the body fluid of a corpse. This refers to liquid that oozes from the decomposing flesh of the body. Ala shidrav al gulgolet, from the spinal column or from a skull of a corpse. Now, Val kazait netzel, we said, or from an olive's volume of the body fluid of a corpse. Val melot tarvad rakav, and from a ladle full of dust from a decomposed corpse. When a body decomposes, it turns into dust. If a tarvad, a kind of large ladle worth of this dust, remains in one place, it contaminates with corpse tumah. The ladle of which the Mishnah speaks holds the volume of 2 average handfuls. Now, in order for a ladle full of corpse dust to give up tumah, it must come from a body that was complete, and it cannot contain any dust from foreign matter. For this reason, the only way this dust ever contaminates is if the body was buried unclothed in a stone or marble coffin, so the dust does not contain any decomposed fabric from clothing or decomposed wood from the coffin, as the Rav explains based off the Gemara in Masechet Nazir, page 51a. Ala shidrav ala gulgolet, from the spinal column or skull of a corpse. These parts of the skeleton, if they are complete, cause tumah, like the corpse itself, even if they are completely stripped of flesh. Val ever min hamet, val ever min hachai sheyesh alav basar karaui, from a limb stripped of most of its flesh that was attached from a corpse, or from a living person, if it still has enough flesh left on it, that had it been attached to a living person, the flesh could have grown back over the whole limb. Now, this is somewhat less than a kazait of flesh. Had there been a kazait or more flesh left on the limb, it would transmit tumah because of the flesh alone, like the Mishnah said earlier. But if it is a complete limb, it transmits tumah even though it does not have a kazait of flesh. Now, the measure of enough flesh to grow back refers to both the limb from a living person and a limb from a dead person. Val chatzi kav atzamot, from half a kav of bones from a corpse, even if these bones make up less than the majority of the skeleton, and half a kav is equal to 2 log or 8 revi'it. Val chatzi log dama, from half a log of blood from a corpse. Now, the commentators explain even a quarter of a kav of bones and even a quarter of a log of blood cause corpse tumah. An oral tradition from Sinai, Moshe Sinai, however, teaches that as regards an azil, only half a kav of bones and only half a log of blood cause an azil to shave. Al magan, val masan, val oalan. For all of these, he must shave whether he became tameh by touching them, carrying them without touching them, or being under the same roof with them. All of the things listed to this point cause tumah the same as the corpse itself, meaning in all 3 ways that a corpse gives up tumah: through touching it, maga, carrying it without touching it, for example, in a box, masa, and through being under the same roof with it, ohel. Roof tumah, tumat ohel, is transmitted not only by being under a roof with it, but also by the source of tumah being directly over the person or object, or by the person or object being directly over the source of tumah, as the Rambam writes in Ilchot Tumat Metim, chapter 1, Halachot 3, 6, and 10. Val etzem kaseora al magao val masao, and a nazir also shaves from becoming tameh from a bone the size of a barley corn, but only if he became tameh by touching it or carrying it. If he was under a roof with it, he does not become tameh, because the bone the size of a barley corn does not transmit tumah to a roof. To cause tumah to a roof, half a kav of bones are needed. Now the Mishnah summarizes: Al elu nazir megaleach, for becoming tameh from these, a nazir must shave his head after purifying himself from the tumah. Umazeh b'shlishi u'b'shvi'i, he must therefore be sprinkled with the purification water of the paraduma on the 3rd and 7th days after he became tameh. Like any other person who needs to become ta'or from corpse tumah, he must also immerse himself in a mikveh after the 2nd sprinkling. V'soter et hakodmin, and he forfeits the previous days that he already observed of his Nazirut, and he must start his term all over again, as the verse states in Bamidbar, chapter 6, verse 12, and the first day shall fall, meaning be forfeited. ואינו מתחיל למנות אלא עד שיתר ומביא את קורבנותיו, and he cannot begin to count the days of his new term of Nazirut until he becomes Ta'or and brings his offerings on the 8th day after becoming Tameh. Since it takes 7 days to become Ta'or, the earliest he can bring his offerings is on the 8th day, and after he brings the offerings is when he can begin to count the days of his new term of Nazirut. And that is in Abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen v'amen.